via email. So we'll see what happens. Okay, folks. So we had a bit of a technical difficulty, but we are going to make sure that this is available. I think some people did get the link, thankfully, and this one is actually live. So hopefully people will get this. We're going to just go right into our Q&A because there is just so much to cover related to this. And I was just sitting here furiously taking notes, and I have questions. And I know hopefully the folks that were in a class, for those who are just who are wondering, what is she talking about? We were having a class on Afrofuturism and Sinners, the film. And because we showed a clip from it, we got cut off. Our live stream got cut off. So we have started up another one, and when I go and do the editing, I'll pair them together. But now we're going to go into the Q&A. We are here with Dr. Ronaldo Anderson, and hopefully people will be able to come back with this. I have tons of questions. So I kind of want to have a conversation about this film within the context of everything that you just talked with us about. And so, and just you and I, we can talk because we, you and I can talk all day. Wait, hold on. Let me actually post this on my other social media. Let's see. Want to join a Q&A about Sinners? We live now. Oh, let me get the link and make sure that everybody has the link. Okay, because I see a couple of people here, so. All right. Okay, so let's get into it. Whew. So I love this film. Me, I'm the film girly. So, for me, this film coming out, I was like, it's my time. It's my time. This is what I was made for. This is what I studied. And it brought up so much for me. And that scene that you played, and if I say that scene, everybody knows what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
And so the first thing I thought about, I took up my son's a musician, and he was just like, Mom, there's 3 eras of music here. And I was like, yeah. I said, the blues is on the top. I said, the funk and rock is in the middle, and the hip hop is on the bottom, is carrying the backbeat. Yeah. And he's like, he blends that so well. He's like, wait, is this about Robert Johnson? And I was like, well, what do you know about Robert Johnson, right? And so you mentioned that and that kind of that lore behind it. But I'm really interested in how Afrofuturism can function to preserve the past, because we often talk about how we're losing recipes. And I know you've noticed it. I've noticed it. Younger folks, they can't braid hair, they can't fry fish, they can't do these basic things that, we kind of came up knowing, and in part because their parents, didn't teach them or whatever. We're losing some things. So how do we make it, first of all, how do we make it to the Afrofuture, this Afrofuture that we're talking about, and being able to bring in the cultural aspects of the Afro part? If we're losing the recipes, how can Afrofuturism, how can Afrofuturism 2.0 help us preserve that?
We're already doing that with a lot of our curated exhibitions. We did that in Carnegie Hall. And we kind of like one of the links that I shared with the class to study was the Black Angel of History exhibition. So the easiest way, when I think of it with Black scholars, is to talk about Sankofa, looking back, to go back and fetch something, bringing it forward. So it kind of, in a way, functions as a meta-modern philosophy. It moves back and forth through time, past, present, future, simultaneously. And the person who did that for me, when I have, as they used to say at church, the testimony about it, was my grandfather. When they used to send us, they had this term where they would talk about down home, where they would send the kids down for the summer. You spend summer in Mississippi, because my father, Air Force officer, every summer, 70s, sending us down to Jackson, Mississippi for the summer. And I remember I come home summer and I had my little record player, and I played a song that I heard on the radio and played my little 45, and it was a Bee Gees record. And my grandfather looked at me with this weird look on his face, and he said, "Boy, come here." He took the record off and he played, and it was the first time I heard the Isley Brothers
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s, back when I think it was Fight the Power. He plays that. And then before that, and he layered that in conversation with Johnny Lee Hooker.
Mm.
So my father was a bluesman and then lived long enough to appreciate the funk era. And so he played both of them while we're sitting on the porch. And my grandmother, I always tell people, she taught me patience by teaching me how to shuck peas, plopping the peas that we were going to eat in a bucket. And she grew her own food, had her fig tree in the backyard. And then watching the movie, I then understood that all those little jars my grandmama had on the shelves, just like Smoke's love interest. And that was like blew me away. So that culture, my grandparents were the young people that would be in the juke joint in the 30s, but they were in their 60s by the late 60s and early 70s. These are the older people then who had strong connections to that culture. And I still heard the word haint, and you need to keep the haints off you and all this other kind of stuff. And I had to ask my mother, what was grandmama talking about? And because at that time, by the 70s, some of the older folks who had grown up, they were maybe embarrassed to talk about it.
Yes.
Because they had been, but that was a cosmology and a way of life. When I tell younger people, I was like, my grandparents didn't have more than a 6th grade education, but they owned their own home. They had plenty of food. There was a particular kind of grounding that they had. And they had guns. So they're a product of Black Southern gun culture. And it was a culture that I think that when a lot of us so-called went to college and got educated, didn't appreciate what it was in terms of how it built mutual aid societies, community connections. And so some of those nonverbal cultural practices that went along with it, that informs early hip hop.
Yeah, for sure.
That transitionary part where early hip hop was still connected to that voodoo, blues, funk trajectory. But then by the 90s, the crack epidemic it's breaking down by then.
Yeah. So, because before we end up in a deep dive on that, I kind of want to go back to what you said. You said something about people being embarrassed, right? And that came up for me around discussions around sinners, right? So you had there's a whole other conversation to be had about what's happening with the Black church and gospel versus contemporary Christian music. There's a whole thing about that. But you had a lot of people saying they weren't going to see it because it's demonic, right? And everything is demonic, right? It's against God and it's all these things. And I'm not going to see that. But then you also had the people who were like, well, I don't want to hear it's just another trauma story. I'm tired of trauma. All this. Okay. And so you have these people kind of, complaining about these things, but I think within it is some embarrassment, and I wonder if some of that embarrassment has been inherited by their parents, their grandparents, who maybe didn't want to share those things, maybe because of their own trauma and their own experiences.
You getting too deep with it. Here's what I think it is. Some of these people just like white proximity.
Oh, yes.
They want to prove.
That's a simple answer. And we know that Black people are
white proximity. And this is what I got to say about it. And first of all, if your faith is going to be shaken up by seeing a movie, it was never there in the first place.
Come on.
Okay. And it's very immature, and your faith is like baby food. And I don't know. It's weak. And so that's why
you were talking about the hoodoo, like how, and for those who didn't catch the other part, you were saying that for more than half the time we were here, we did not practice Christianity.
Yes. And the thing is, for a lot of our times here, we weren't doing any of the traditional mainstream Christianity. We were doing our own thing because they don't really start even trying to get Black people into the church in large numbers until after the American Revolution. But still large numbers were not even involved with Christianity until the 19th century. And
And they
so,
didn't want to see this because they maybe heard about the hoodoo and decided that that was demonic. But I'm like, not,
and this is
not
where
really.
I always encourage people that a book is your friend,
Mhm.
because the Europeans never gave up their hoodoo version of it,
Oh,
whatever.
they sure
Now, so
did.
you can go to a Catholic church and it talks about the body and blood of Christ, and you
Mhm.
put the little wafer in your
Cannibalism, human
mouth.
sacrifice, yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it's real kind of
But also
shallow, and
also they
you know,
maintain paganism, they're Wiccan,
of
they like
course,
all of
of
that.
course,
They were allowed, I mean, and people say, "Oh, they burned the witches." They didn't burn the witches, they
of
burned
course.
women. They burned women. It wasn't because they
And
were witches,
so
it's
this
'cause they
is
were
where
property owning women.
the fact that we have not incorporated, we've only really been in a deep scholarly way have been involved with it for about a generation now.
That's rough.
So if you really understand what it is, you got to deal with internal ignorance in our community, and then external that you got to deal with the remix. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of people outside our community know perfectly well what it is. Because I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you, when we started the contemporary Afrofuturist Black speculative movement, we were getting hit up from people, the people that contacted us the most were people from Europe
Yeah.
who have
Yeah.
been studying this stuff since the Middle
Yeah.
Ages. And
Yeah.
so they were treating me and John Jennings and others like, oh, this is the new Black thing, like the way they came up with jazz. They must
Mm.
be coming out with the new
They
thing
must be
now for the.
coming up with something new.
Yeah, that's right.
And how
And
do
so
we
we,
steal that? Like we stole
yeah,
jazz.
and so that's why in the Black speculative art movement, I'll tell people, yeah, we gatekeep. Yeah, that's Remick there. Here come
Let's talk
Remick.
about that. Let's talk
You
about the
know, yeah,
gatekeeping. So when
yeah.
it comes to Afrofuturism and the Black speculative arts movement, what does gatekeeping look like?
The gatekeeping looks like this. It is, we're not really going to embrace you unless you've done the work.
Mm.
Okay. And we have different domains of interest. We got Black women who are heavily into conjure, like Kenitra Brooks. We have, and others. We have people like Quentin Versetti and them in Canada who bring in that Caribbean flavor to it that comes from the islands. People from Brazil that mix in Candomblé with their version of it. And so one of the things we decided a decade ago, that's why when you were reading my bio, we said, no, we're going to put a whole bunch of books and knowledge and scholarship behind what we do, because what we're not getting ready to do is have a bunch of people come in who are not part of it trying to define our stuff.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going to define it and then show people what it looks like,
Yeah,
you know,
because
and
I feel like we some particularly people born after 1990, and I'm gonna keep saying sorry, all
yeah,
shade, y'all, all shade, all tea,
yeah,
because there's a difference there, and I've been noticing it, and their willingness, right, to embrace others, definitely because social media has made the world smaller, right, and we have to talk about that because technology is a part of this. So the world has gotten smaller for them, and then this is all they know. So for them, especially because a lot of them have not experienced the overt racism that maybe like you, I, and our people came up with, they're
yeah,
opening the doors for everyone. They're so impressed by
yeah,
if a white person can dance on the 2 and the 4, he's invited to the cookout.
yeah.
And I'm like,
And
okay, so when you watch this film, Kugler
but
is
let me
reminding
give you the
us
Yeah,
like
let
not
me give
to
you the
do that shit.
background. This is what the politics of the cookout are. And I remember, and I'll attribute this to the
And
grand
everybody,
dame
he's
of,
been to my cookout. So okay, we
yeah,
can talk about
the
it.
one of the grand dames of Black speculative thought who has influenced a lot of my thinking is Cherie Renee Thomas, who wrote Dark Matter, did all the things doing that work in the 90s. And the way she explains it is, Black folk, and this is why we gatekeep, we don't let you bring raisins to put in our potato salad if it doesn't belong. And because a lot of times what happens, Black folk think we're supposed to welcome everybody, but then when we go to these other people's cookout, we get our hands slapped away because
Mm.
they're very
Or
protective. They say,
poison.
"Oh, you," but they
Mm.
think that we're supposed to automatically let you come, get our stuff, and say nothing about it. And
Mm.
then when they have something, they will be quick to let you know that you're not really a part of this or whatever. So, I openly say I gatekeep, and if
Yeah,
people don't like it,
and I
and
think
so
Kugler was trying to remind us to do that. Like he's like
yeah,
saying,
and
yes,
then
this person is
but then
speaking real stuff.
yeah, and then proper attribution of this. I think it was
Yeah.
intentional. Like Remick is Irish, The Irish have been colonized longer than by the West than Africa was. See, the interesting thing about the connection between the Irish and Black people when it comes to Freemasonry, see, white Anglo people did not believe Black people could be Freemasons because they say you got to be born free. In America, the first Black Freemason was initiated by the Irish. You remember the Irish, Prince Hall was initiated by members of an Irish regiment during, leading up to the American Revolution. But the thing is, the Irish, and when you understand some of its rituals of Freemason, whatever, it goes back to Kemet.
Yes,
and most
it does.
Black people,
Yes,
when they talk about Masonic stuff, there's this. I'm like, fool, you don't even know that what Europeans did. They appropriated stuff from the 20-something dynasty that is the bedrock architectural stuff for Freemasonry, and then they basically did a vanilla ice version of it that they appropriate from people from Africa, and vanilla ice that thing up, because there was no such word a few hundred years ago called plagiarism. Okay. But the thing is, it goes back to, and that's why what Eurocentrism was. Samir Amin says what Eurocentrism is they borrow their religion from North Africa and the Near East. They get technology or stuff like algebra from the Arabs and whatever, and then wrap it up in white skin by getting everybody else's stuff and claiming that they are the originators of these ideas when they're not. Even Nell Painter, when she wrote a book, The History of White People, until 200 years ago, Greece was regarded as Turkish because it had been a part of the Ottoman Empire for 500 years. So that is why the concept of the West is not even real. It's an artificial creation. So what's happening now with Sinners is provoking a conversation of the things that we used to do that we had control of before we bought into the world that was put together and engineered and promoted to us the last 60 years. And since we know that stuff that has been sold to us the last 60 years is going away, there's a reckoning. See, there's not just a reckoning between Black versus white. There's an internal reckoning in the Black community now. Like, okay, you got us to go hook, line, and sinker to be like, okay, forget having your own thing. And Carter G. Woodson brings this out in Miseducation of Negro, where Black people think it's more important to go work for some white people with a suitcase and tie rather than owning your own little business of selling
white
fish.
man's ice is colder.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And so it's this kind of white proximity thing. And another white theologian talk about it. Remick represents white theology. Okay. They like Black music as long as you only singing in the choir and you an usher in their church, but you ain't running nothing else.
Not gonna run nothing else.
So there will you.
I gotta bring you back because you and I we can't run this like we haven't talked. Because we be talking for an hour. We got audience.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah.
We don't have a whole lot more time, but this is why I want to touch on this, right? Because we actually had a class on Nomo, right, and the power of naming, right? And so there was this, this scene in the scene that you showed, preacher starts singing, but then Delta Slim stops him and says, "Tell him who you are." Right.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people kind of skipped over that a little bit. And I was thinking about, this power of naming. And then he goes on and he says, we brought this from home.
Yes.
Right. And I've been really concerned lately. There seems to be an uptick in African Americans being like, I ain't African. And I mean, there's always been a little bit of that tension, right? Because and that goes back to the Garifuna people, and when they came over, when Africans came over with the Arawak, and then when the colonizers came, they told the people they were bringing that the ones that were already there were cannibals and things like that. So that's a whole history of that. But I'm seeing more of it, these fake diaspora wars or whatever. But like it's getting to me. And so like
I'm gonna deal with Noma. Okay.
So for the Afrofuture, how do we get these people to come with us? Because they're rejecting this African, even that we see in this film. Ryan Coogler lays it out. We're all connected. This is where it comes. There's no denying this. Blah, he shows how these interventions have harmed us and brought us away from our African roots. But yet we still have so many people saying, nah.
Okay, can I answer?
Yes, you can.
All right. Well, you mentioned NOMO earlier. What the NOMO functions is like an ontological register of recognizing where we came from and what we've been through. And that's what he talked about, that tell them who you are in a really a good Black Christian church, a Black church. I won't even use the word Christian. I'll use followers who are interested in that perspective. A really good preacher can make you forget time and space. He'll take they will make you forget time and space because the power of the word, it'll feel like you've been there 15 minutes and you look at the watch, oh man, I was here 90 minutes. And it felt like he made you forget the material space you occupying because he's got you caught up.
Yeah, especially with the repetition, he's lulling you in with the repetition, which comes from him. The repetition emphasis, he's pulling you in.
Yes. And that's because with that ontological register and that cosmology in Africa that comes from people of African descent through the spoken word, that's what's happening. Now, the rejection of people saying, oh, I ain't no African or whatever, that when we were at the UN last year, they said last year, fall 2024 at the United Nations, that AI and bots were going to intensify their attack on the Black community, especially targeting Black women last fall, because Black women were the most cohesive political force in the community. And so people don't know, they're out there arguing with bots and other people who are compensated for spreading this kind of stuff. And I don't think we could be concerned about taking them along with us. Harriet Tubman couldn't convince Black folks to go to slavery, and they stayed, and we need to leave them right there like Harriet Tubman would have left them. You know
what? So and I'm with you. I'm actually with you because I just had this conversation. Brilliant sister. I mean, the sister is in the fight, and we talk. And so I just said to her, I said, if I got 10 people in one boat, and 9 of them are ready to come, and one of them still got questions and is putting up an argument, I'm not putting them on the boat because I'm going to risk them sinking us all.
That's right.
Sabotaging us.
That's
and
right.
there's some of us that are at that point, right? We're like, listen, we got to get as many to this Afro future as we can. But then there's some who are saying, I'm still going to try. And I feel like I've moved past that.
Yeah. Well, I'll say something.
In the film too. There's a bit of that in the film too. This attempt to try to save people, right? This idea, I'm going to save you and bring you to this new light and this new thing. And it's just,
and this is where that tension comes in. Like, I know your background was a social worker, so that's just how you fight.
Yeah.
My background is in the Marine Corps. We don't think like that.
Yeah.
So we talk about the few, and it's kind of like we there to do a job, and we're not going to save everybody. And so the thing is, though, we need to recognize that. I mean, everybody's not going to come, and we can't worry about the ones that's going to come. And it's kind of like you go out and because how do I want to put it in a condensed way? We had the same argument 100 years ago when you had so-called members of the Harlem Renaissance that tried to trash Zora Neale Hurston because they did not like her using that Black vernacular English in her book. But she turned out to be one of the 5 great literary figures of the 20th century. And the people who criticized her, some of them at least, and the general people, they turned out to be trash, because it took Europeans to tell white Americans that jazz was a great art form. And some of our people, they won't tell you you're great until white people say it first. So
that's what I'm seeing happening now with the younger folks. It's like they're seeking
I don't care because look, some of them. Just because you young don't mean you special, because some of them are trash too. I remember I saw people during the Ferguson Rebellion in St. Louis thinking because they're young, they're supposed to be a leader and hadn't read a damn book. They were trying to say, well, I'm like Huey Newton. I'm like, no, you're just you. Huey Newton was a genius. You just average. Okay.
You didn't even read Revolutionary Suicide.
And I'm just saying they never read that. and we cater to some of these young people because we're not supposed to hurt people's feelings. And that's where, remember the blues thing where he said, I had to lie to you because you couldn't handle the truth?
Woo!
And that's what we do to some of these people. We lie to them because they can't handle the truth. Because if you tell them the truth, they go into meltdown and they want somebody to babysit their feelings when the information is there for everybody. You know, it's in a place called a library. And I had a dude that was in the rebellion who was with one of those gun-bearing clubs, gave him a bunch of books to read since he said he was a leader of this group. He gonna wait until several years after he said, man, I should have listened. Yeah, that's why you almost got some people killed, because your dumbass wouldn't read. Okay.
Listen, we got this question. You're right. You're right. Well, also, only 15% of us can read beyond an 8th grade level. So that's a whole other thing.
So, and that's what, but see, it's not even an 8th grade level. It's about commitment. I will trust a lot of people in a regular Sunday school Bible class before I will some Negroes with a PhD.
No, I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not a reading level.
I feel you, family.
I'm just telling you, because some of the people that got doctorates, their ethics are so pitiful.
Yeah.
You know,
these for-profit schools. But look, let's get this question. Yeah. Was Sinners a statement showing that we have largely lost what we have largely lost while riding the boat of integration? And I you know, my answer is, I mean, there were so many themes, but I think I think his primary indictment was on the ways in which we have internalized and prioritized white ways of being, whether it's spiritual, physical, you know, all those financial, all those things, right? All of their indicators of success and all of that stuff. The people who were stopping, if you look at Annie, and she was taking the wooden nickels and the money. She's like, I don't need that money. I'm with my community. Like, she's kind of holding off that white way of being with the money. You have different points where people are kind of like, I don't need that. I'm, you know, what I have is here. But, you know, but I think for sure, I think he's really looking at spiritually. And that's why the religious theme comes in. That's why he has them walking like drones, reciting the Lord's Prayer, following this white man. I think it's a clear statement about, you know, what we've lost. But I also think that there is a tension there with Stack after he is converted. Like, and I say converted intentionally. So after he is converted, he starts acting like how born again folks are once they get converted.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Also to other people, it's like baby queers. Once they come out as queer, then they're like super queer. It's just like,
they're doing too much.
Yeah, they're doing too much. But I think for him though, I think he really believed that this was the freedom. You know what I mean? He really, I think that Stack, once he was converted, he really believed that.
Well, who was it that convert Stack? Who was it that convert Stack? Old girl.
Yeah, it was.
She let him drip saliva all up in his mouth, and
but he loved her, so he trusted
loved her. But there's a politics behind that. But I had family members like Stack. You know, hooked on drugs, did jail, they get out of jail, and the Negro sitting up watching. What's his name? What's the big white speaker? The guy down in Texas. Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
And Joel Osteen, when you listen to him, he's basically a persuasive speaker. He's not even really, you know. Then they want to listen to Pastor Joel Osteen after they've been to cricket. It is so funny, and that's why I had a lot of my friends that know me and know my family background, because my family came out of that kind of stuff. What was it? They said my grandparents fought each other in front of the Piggly Wiggly. They went to juke joint, blues stuff, and all that kind of stuff. And they would say, man, you a lot like Smoke, you know, ex-military, never smile, and that kind of stuff. And so, and I've had so a lot of us can relate to that Smoke and Stack, and then see it looks like in contemporary things. And we understand everybody's not going to be saved.
Yeah.
And so there's an understanding where we are now going back. What was this all about? This political capital we spent the last 60 years on. And when I was a baby, I'm born with voting rights, but now as a person who's becoming a senior citizen, they're about to take all that away. What was that all about?
It was a smoke screen. It was nonsense.
And Smoke, and remember, Smoke does not get hurt or die until he takes off his lover's charm. That protected him through the World War I. And he said, no, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to go be with my woman and my baby. Okay.
And the baby, right? Yeah. So I want to wrap this up because it's a perfect segue. So you said in your talk this idea about freedom is a living thing and how they didn't
Yeah,
really speak of liberation for our ancestors. It was freedom, right?
freedom.
And
It was freedom.
so in this in Sinners, Annie makes Smoke promise that if she's bitten, he's going to, you know, to kill her because she says, I got somebody waiting for me, right? And so
Yes,
for her, she does not want to be undead because the
that's
freedom
right.
is in living. And so for her, it's just a transition. And I really
Yeah,
loved Kugler bringing that because that's my personal beliefs. You know, I believe in the transition and all of that stuff like that. And so to see it displayed like that was amazing. And just kind of this idea that freedom is a living thing. And
yes.
for her, freedom was going to be with her child on
Hmm.
this other side rather than walking this earth as undead. Right. And I
Yeah.
just thought that that was like super powerful and wanted to time that in. But we are over our time and I don't want to take up your time and everybody
No,
else's.
we're having a great talk. I mean, if people
Yeah,
got
I love
questions,
it.
we can
I
go
can
on.
talk about this film forever. I
But
really, I've seen it
that's
six
the
times
part.
now.
That's the part where I would tell you, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Is why I don't listen to certain leftists anymore when they talk about liberation. No, our people talked about freedom.
Mm,
You know, and that to me, liberation, that's when you get caught into all that European philosophy, the left versus the right, and all that other stuff. So
mm.
our ideas of freedom is to the left of the left. They
Exactly.
can't
That's what I tell people.
conceive.
I said, I'm so left, I'm out the door. Like,
And
y'all think I'm
so,
not
yeah,
leftist. Don't call me that. I'm out the
yeah,
door, baby.
freedom. And that's why I said for her being free, as
Mm.
you said, we have some of our people that rather be undead than be
They would
free,
rather be undead.
than be
Say
free.
it again. They would rather be undead and
Yes,
roam this earth among these people who have rendered them unhuman and tried to strip
unhuman,
us of everything for centuries and centuries and centuries. You would rather
be
devote
undead
everything
than be
that you
free.
are to be undead and walk with them than
Yep.
to be freed and out of this space. And so
Yeah.
when we bring it back to the Afrofuturism, this idea of like, you know, space and time, bending space and time, and you know, transmission, like we are transmitting to other times. For me, Annie decided I'm going to another time and space. That's
And
it.
that's
And
why
I'm making this choice.
and that's why the other cultures love our music because they got their own. It connect like the Chinese perspective in there. They got their own perspective of time and space.
Yes.
Other cultures. That's why our culture travels the world
Yes.
because it comes, you know, with the time and space element and other that Sinners brings out. That's why that people talk about our music. You could, I mean, I walk through malls in Sweden, whether it's in Palestine or whatever, and they playing Black American music. So that's why when I hear people, oh, they don't have a culture, I'm like, you must be dumb or illiterate, you know. But you know what I'm saying? I
No,
don't
it's
cut these
real.
people.
And
Yeah.
it's like I need more people. And I, you know, I love that Sinners brought up a lot of the conversations. And I know that there was a little bit of talk about Afrofuturism. But what I also understand, and maybe this will be the final question because I think this is important as well.
Okay.
A lot of people, when they talk about Afrofuturism, they're not covering the 5 dimensions that you brought up, right?
No, they're
They're
not.
thinking about mostly artistic things, right? They're thinking about
Yeah.
the literature, they're thinking about music, possibly film, maybe. But they're not thinking about the metaphysical, the technology, the architectural stuff, and the social science aspects of it. Just to round us, like wrap us up in one, giving your thoughts about that, but two, and also two, like why do you think they're so limited? I mean, I have an answer, but share with our audience why you think they're
Well,
so
because
limited.
they wanna,
Three, well, wait,
they
let me finish.
wanna, they
Three, let
only
me
wanna, they
stop.
want to engage a Disneyland version
They
of it,
do. Yes.
you
How do
know.
we
And
get people beyond that? How do we get them to Afrofuturism 2.0? How do we make sure that it
uh,
doesn't get just
well,
locked away in the academy?
well, that's why we did we do our community work.
Yeah.
This didn't start in the academy. Our first events were out in public libraries and other spaces. Because if this had really started in, I'll just say it, most of us are products of HBCUs. A lot of people that are activists. You couldn't have started the contemporary Afrofuturist piece in a predominantly white institution. It'd have been sterile and
Mm,
boring. and just some piece that ends up in a journal or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. We were very intentional about doing community spaces because a lot of our people don't feel comfortable in these higher institution spaces that are anti-Black. So
Yeah.
that's why we would pick Black spaces to introduce the idea at a grassroots level,
Yeah.
and then use social media to help people find each other. And right now, now we're in the middle of transitioning into Web 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of the I shouldn't say it publicly, we're not sad about what's happening in Hollywood and all those spaces, because those people were never friends to Black people. The
Mm.
technology is so cheap now. If you have the correct philosophical perspective, bringing all those domains together, you can put out your own creative content
Yeah,
that
I saw a
reflects
lot of
you.
it at Black Star, like the
Yeah,
experimental film. A
yeah,
lot of people, again, they are bending time and space behind these
yeah,
cameras, which a lot of them look like this,
yes.
and so there's
And
the opportunity there.
oh yeah, that's why. Put it this way, that's why a friend of mine was doing a joke, and I won't say his name because he asked me not to. That's why we were saying Donald Trump is doing the Lord's work,
Ooh.
because he's hurting all these people feelings about proximity to whiteness and letting them know where they stand. But see, they're under the
Is this what you
delusion.
think people need? You think people need to
Oh
have it
yeah, they
beat
needed to
over their
hear that
head this
because,
way?
but see, the MAGA people don't realize that in the broader world, that white folks don't matter that much as they used to.
That's real.
I
That's
mean, they are going back to 1950. They keep forgetting for most of world history, the non-white world had the largest economies and all this stuff. So in their time and space, the world is coming back to normal. And they're just
real.
trying to, people out here, the Black world, Asian world, whatever, they're just trying to survive and say, look, man, let's try and have a world and hope these people ain't crazy enough to launch nuclear weapons or whatever,
That's
because
that's
because economically, intellectually, and all that,
we ain't got no
they're
nuke.
not they're not competitive. They're just reflecting a world that was built between 45 to 2008 and it's going away.
Yeah.
And a lot of these cultures, what they're working on is, okay, how can we try as much as possible coexist with what used to be called the West?
Mm.
And so really Afrofuturism 2.0 is talking about metaphysically and geopolitically aligning more with the global South. And you can see the contours of the way these young people turned out and checked out for Gaza, Iran,
Yeah.
telling Iran, the Persians, they could come to the cookout and all this other stuff. Just go and read the literature before World War II, where they had to watch the Black community because the Black Americans like Japan too much,
Yeah, that's true.
in terms of a lot of things. So they have,
And in World War I, we like the Bolsheviks too much.
and the sister, what's her name? Turner. Is her name Dorothy Turner?
What are you talking about?
The activist who used to work for Bernie Sanders, Turner.
Nina.
Nina Turner. And go back and you all can Google this and clock it. She said Donald Trump was about to unleash madness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he has done.
Oh, I
And
said
so
I said several years ago, I said he's going to be president again. They're like, no, he's not. I said, yes, he
yeah,
is.
but
He has
he's
to,
done.
because he has to usher in this new world order.
And
Like he has
so,
to.
so in my own generation, because who's my peer? We're the same year. She was at Howard. I'm at Jackson State. Kamala Harris gonna come and say the system is broken. But I'm like, wait, baby, you were the system.
Ooh.
So what are you talking about?
Now,
That
you know this professional here. We got
man. I'm just saying. She rode it for years, but now it's broken because she ain't win.
I got
So
a
I'm like,
brand.
I'm just telling you.
No, but you're right. Like, no, so I fully, obviously, I don't like any of these people, but I think just kind of like summarizing in the context of like, and for those who did not get to see the earlier presentation, after Sankofa Summer School is over, we will be making all of those links available to the public, so you can go back and watch it. If you're joining the Q&A because you're thinking about Sinners, you missed some of it because we're doing that part. But if I were to summarize this, connecting Afrofuturism, Afrocentricity, kind of how we're using media to send these messages and to try to educate our own people, I get a lot of people, as the film lady, I'm always defending Black art, right? I'm defending Black cinema. And I always have to deal with the people who say, they're tired of slave movies, they're tired of trauma, they're tired of these things. But I always counter, I say, but y'all don't read books. So we have to teach you these things somehow. And
Yeah.
film really is the most powerful media that we have. Film and television, it reaches the most people and it has the most impact. So for Coogler to take on these really nuanced kind of these themes and these ideas, to bring the history in, to give you a history lesson, to teach you about the future, to give you guidance on what you're supposed to do. Some things I had some issues with, just historical inaccuracy. Like, for example, I say all the time, there was no sissy, and it doesn't make sense to have a juke in the 1930s and there isn't a sissy figure there because they were so prominent in blues and jazz, whatever. But, stuff like that. But he's giving you lessons. He's giving you history. He's giving you all the things that you haven't read. One, because you've been disenfranchised from reading it, but two, because you're also lazy, right?
Yeah.
We have to have these things. So I don't like when people complain, because I'm always like, don't talk about what we shouldn't make. If you don't want to watch it, fine. But these stories have to be told, and this art has to be made. And you're talking about the Black speculative arts movement. Everybody, again, this is Dr. Ronaldo Anderson. He is the executive director of the Black speculative arts movement. We have to think about how we can use our art, our literature, film, photography, painting, all these things, to bring us into this future, to preserve our history, to preserve our culture, to bring it into the future, to gatekeep, to be on the other side after these white people destroy themselves, because they're on the verge of completely destroying themselves. And we're basically just figuring out how we take cover so we don't get caught up in it.
How to survive it.
How to survive it. But we got to be on the other side. And so what does freedom look like on the other side?
Yeah, what does freedom look like?
Freedom for us in many ways, and some could say it's when they're gone, right? On some levels. Like, how do we, after everything they've done for the last, however many centuries, how do we exist as free people in a world where they're still in power? They have to not be in power. And that's part of that. But anyway, I want to thank you again for doing this. You take your time out. I know you're busy. You're an associate professor. You've got all these wonderful things that you're doing. You're working on books. You're working on journals. You're doing all the wonderful things that we love and appreciate. So I do thank you for coming and blessing Sankofa Summer School for the second year. And we hope to have you in the future. Anything you want to talk about, you are always welcome here. Everybody who came, thank you so much. I apologize that the stream got cut off. I wasn't thinking about the fact that we were playing Sinners and we might get hit with a strike. But most of you made it back, and we appreciate you. Just so you know, if you signed up for tomorrow's class on Tuesday, it has been canceled. I did send out emails about that. And then the next class we will be on Wednesday. We are talking about Black men's mental health from an Afrocentric perspective. We're hoping that you come back and join us on Wednesday. Please check your emails for all the information. Thank you once again. And finally, of course, I have to beg you all for money, because that's what we do here. This is a grassroots funded thing. We rely on our community. We like to pay our instructors. We like to keep the lights on over here. So if you support what we're doing, please go to sankofasummerschool.com, donate, or you can hit me up on the Cash App and Venmo at Fem Jones. All this money goes right back into the school. I don't make anything off of this. This is a labor of love that actually came out of being in the Africology department that Dr. Anderson currently teaches in. So if you can support us, we really definitely appreciate it. And until next time, we will see you all then. Thank you again. Love you.